Come on now, who you gonna call? Under the Lake, the latest episode of Doctor Who to air. It is the first part of a two-part. It's their second story. I am going to say I like that we're getting more two-parters, more serialized stories this series, because it gives more room for these stories to breathe. And one of the things that happens sometimes is that episodes can feel very rushed, and there are certainly some ideas that have happened in the last few years that I'm like, that would have been so much better if it could have been paced a little bit more leisurely. And I feel like they're picking stories to do as the two-parters that really take advantage of being stretched out over a longer time frame. I like the sense of mystery about this episode, because it doesn't feel like cheap mystery. It feels very genuine. Like from pretty much the first time we see I guess I'll put up spoiler warning from here on out. Overall, I liked it, so going on from there. But when we first start seeing the ghosts, they're talking and we can't hear a single thing that they're saying, but obviously they're saying something, so we know there's a piece of this puzzle we're missing. And I kind of like the way the episode sort of dangles in front of us, showing you exactly what you don't know yet. We'll fill this in later, don't worry. And that was just the vibe I got from the writing on the wall. I think this was pretty cleverly laid out and pretty well paced. I really like the cliffhanger at the end. I saw it coming probably about maybe 5 seconds sooner than I was supposed to see it coming, but that's still a really good cliffhanger, because you find yourself wondering, well, how in the heck did that happen and how do we get out of that? I mean, obviously we're going to get out of that. We always do, but that's a heck of a situation to leave us in. Way better than the cliffhanger that was used back in The Magician's Apprentice. The Doctor's doing that. I'm really intrigued and I'm loving this because it's something I don't know thing that the Doctor does at times, and it's something I've always loved. The supporting cast, not exception. I mean, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but these sorts of situations, like the one that immediately comes to mind as a comparison point is The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit. And to make that comparison, that the supporting team on that one, they felt like a cohesive unit, felt like a crew. You felt the chemistry, you felt the history between them. I don't really get that with a lot of this crew. I mean, as I said, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but it doesn't gel the way a lot of the really good supporting cast have in previous episodes. I mean, even last series, a lot of those episodes had fantastic supporting cast. Flatline, Mummy on the Orient Express, those were phenomenal supporting cast, because for as little time as they got, they felt like fully fleshed out characters. They felt like they had history. They had chemistry with each other. These ones, they're just kind of there, and they're not poorly acted or anything, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of meat to them. I kind of like that pause moment that happened inside the TARDIS with Clara and the Doctor, where the Doctor was kind of like, you need to stop acting like me. And I feel like that's probably our first bit of solid foreshadowing for whatever the circumstances end up being for Clara leaving the TARDIS. So I like feeling that seeds are getting planted in a more character-driven way, not in sort of the blatant way that Russell T Davies used to plant seeds, like just repeating Bad Wolf or Torchwood or Mr. Saxon over and over and over again until we find out what that means. The ghosts I like. It's a simple design, but it's effective. And they're just appropriately creepy. It's a creepy look. I mean, overall, this is just a really good setup episode, which is what the first half of a good two-parter should be. But ultimately, it's all going to come down to the payoff. This is going to weigh heavily on what the conclusion ends up being and what the answers end up being. More so than the last two-parter. Magician's Apprentice, I think, was a pretty good episode. Well, I mean, there were some issues with it, but it was a pretty solid episode unto itself, even though it ended on a cliffhanger. This one, it feels much more like this is the first half, the story's not done. And again, nothing wrong with that, but it makes this harder to judge as a thing unto itself. It does definitely make me want to see the rest of the story, so it's doing its job pretty well. And one other random note, the thing with the cards that Clara had written out, I guess sort of more human or humane responses from the Doctor to use as reference, that was a weird moment, and I didn't like it, because I'm fine with the Doctor not necessarily, picking up cues for when to say certain things or not knowing what to say, even if he picks up on the cues, but having cards on hand, that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like him. it was just an odd moment. It felt like something somebody pitched at a story meeting at one point and they just could never figure out a good place to put it in, so they just stuck it in a random episode. It feels out of character for the Doctor. It doesn't seem like the sort of thing he'd agree to. It honestly seems somewhat out of character for Clara, because it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that she would try to make him do to conform to being more normal, I guess. And especially in an episode where she's so gung-ho for the adventure and the weirdness, it was odd. It was out of place. It was a throwaway joke that didn't work. And I probably just spent more time talking about it than was warranted. Overall, though, like I said, really, really good setup. Excited to see what happens next. Have you seen Under the Lake? What were your thoughts on it? Whatever they were, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.